August 25, 1944. Near Chartres, France. The morning air still carried the smell of burned fuel and shattered steel as the lead elements of General George S. Patton's U.S. Third Army pushed east across the French countryside. Tanks rumbled through villages only recently freed from German occupation, while reconnaissance jeeps searched every crossroads for signs of retreating enemy forces. To many American soldiers, victory seemed unstoppable. The German front had cracked after the breakout from Normandy, and the road toward the heart of Europe appeared wide open. Yet hundreds of miles behind the advancing spearheads, another battle was quietly unfolding. Mountains of ammunition waited to be delivered. Fuel drums stood stacked beside crowded ports. Spare parts, medical supplies, and food stretched across endless depots. Every mile Patton gained placed his army farther from its lifeline. Engines that had survived combat could be silenced by something as ordinary as an empty fuel tank. The fastest army in Europe was beginning to outrun its own supplies. German commanders watched the American advance with cautious confidence. They believed logistics, not bullets, would stop Patton. Their calculations seemed reasonable. Railways lay in ruins, bridges had been destroyed, and France's roads were choked with military traffic. No modern army, they believed, could sustain such a relentless pace over such distances. What they failed to imagine was an operation unlike anything seen before. Day and night, thousands of trucks would thunder along carefully controlled routes, driven by determined soldiers who rarely fired a shot but whose work would shape the course of the campaign. Their mission would become known as the Red Ball Express, and its success would transform transportation into one of the greatest weapons of the Second World War. As Allied forces burst out of Normandy during Operation Cobra in late July 1944, the pace of the advance exceeded almost every expectation. German defenses collapsed across large sections of western France, allowing Patton's newly activated Third Army to exploit the breakthrough with remarkable speed. Town after town fell with little delay, and columns of American armor raced eastward faster than planners had ever predicted. The very success of the offensive, however, created a dangerous problem. Supply plans had been designed for a slower campaign. Every additional mile stretched the fragile chain connecting the front to the ports of Normandy. At the same time, Allied engineers faced enormous obstacles. Retreating German forces had demolished bridges, sabotaged railroads, and destroyed switching yards. The French railway system, once expected to carry the bulk of Allied supplies, remained largely unusable. Trucks suddenly became the only practical solution. Yet even that solution seemed impossible. Tens of thousands of tons of fuel, ammunition, food, medical equipment, and spare parts needed to reach armies advancing across hundreds of miles of occupied territory. Senior Allied commanders approved an extraordinary emergency operation. On August 25, 1944, the Red Ball Express officially began. Its name came from the red circles once used by American railroads to mark high-priority freight. Now that symbol represented the most urgent military transport network in Europe. Special one-way routes were established across France. Convoys moved continuously, with loaded trucks traveling toward the front while empty vehicles returned along separate roads. Military police controlled intersections, and civilian traffic was kept away whenever possible. The system operated almost without pause, 24 hours a day. The men behind the steering wheels became the true engine of the operation. Nearly three-quarters of the Red Ball Express drivers were African American soldiers serving in segregated transportation companies. Although denied equal treatment within their own military, they accepted one of the most dangerous and exhausting assignments of the campaign. Many drove for 20 hours or more with little sleep. They repaired broken vehicles beside dark roads, navigated through rain and dust, and often continued despite enemy aircraft, artillery fire, or mechanical failures. Their trucks became familiar sights throughout liberated France. Most were GMC 2.5-ton cargo trucks, capable of carrying enormous loads despite rough roads and constant overuse. Drivers frequently overloaded them beyond official limits because every gallon of gasoline and every crate of ammunition mattered. Headlights were often dimmed or covered at night to reduce visibility from enemy aircraft, making accidents frighteningly common. Dust clouds blinded drivers by day, while darkness challenged them after sunset. Even so, the convoys kept moving. The numbers quickly became astonishing. Within weeks, thousands of vehicles were traveling the routes every day. Millions of gallons of fuel reached advancing armored divisions, along with artillery shells, rations, medical supplies, and replacement parts. Mechanics worked around the clock to return damaged trucks to service. Tire shortages became severe. Engines wore out under constant strain, and maintenance crews performed miracles simply to keep vehicles rolling another 100 miles. Meanwhile, German intelligence observed the American advance with increasing frustration. Officers understood that Patton's operational style depended upon speed. If fuel delivery stopped, his tanks would stop as well. Reports correctly noted Allied dependence on trucks, but few German commanders appreciated the scale or discipline of the transport system that had emerged behind the front. Every day the Red Ball Express erased another prediction that logistics alone would halt the offensive. Patton himself remained famously impatient. He demanded fuel in quantities that seemed impossible to provide, pressing his staff relentlessly as his armored divisions approached the Moselle River. Supply officers struggled to satisfy competing demands from other Allied armies, while balancing limited resources. Every gallon sent to one commander meant another formation might receive less. These decisions carried enormous strategic consequences, influencing where offensives could continue and where armies temporarily paused. Despite its achievements, the Red Ball Express was never a perfect system. Trucks consumed enormous amounts of the very fuel they carried. Mechanical breakdowns multiplied as mileage increased. Drivers suffered exhaustion, and accidents claimed lives even without enemy action. The operation also depended upon constant improvisation. Engineers repaired roads almost as quickly as military traffic damaged them, while quartermasters adapted to changing priorities with remarkable speed. By mid-autumn, captured ports, repaired railways, and restored infrastructure gradually reduced dependence on emergency trucking. On November 16, 1944, the Red Ball Express officially ended after less than 3 months of continuous operation. Yet during that brief period, it had transported hundreds of thousands of tons of supplies across France, making one of history's largest military trucking operations, a decisive element of the Allied campaign. Its greatest achievement cannot be measured only in tons delivered or miles driven. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that logistics could determine operational success just as surely as battlefield courage. Every Sherman tank that continued its advance, every artillery battery that maintained fire, and every infantry unit that received food and ammunition owed something to the endless stream of trucks rolling through France. While combat troops captured headlines, the drivers behind them quietly ensured that momentum never completely disappeared. Military historians have since pointed to the Red Ball Express as one of the defining examples of modern operational logistics. It revealed that industrial capacity, transportation planning, engineering, and human endurance were inseparable from battlefield victory. The campaign became a lesson studied by armies around the world. An army does not move because its soldiers wish to advance, it moves because someone, somewhere, keeps fuel in its tanks and supplies on its trucks. The Red Ball Express officially ended in November 1944. But its impact continued long after the last convoy rolled to a stop. The emergency supply network had carried the Allied advance through one of the most critical phases of the war, proving that logistics could be as decisive as tanks, aircraft, or artillery. Every gallon of fuel delivered Every crate of ammunition unloaded. And every engine repaired helped keep the momentum that eventually carried Allied armies into the heart of Germany. For decades, many of the men who drove those endless miles received little public recognition. Most were African American soldiers serving in segregated transportation units, performing one of the war's most demanding and dangerous jobs with remarkable courage and professionalism. They rarely appeared in headlines. Yet without their determination, commanders like General George S. Patton could never have maintained the speed that defined the Allied campaign across France. Military academies around the world still study the Red Ball Express as a masterpiece of operational logistics. Its legacy extends far beyond World War II, influencing how modern armies plan supply chains, transportation networks, and rapid offensive operations. It serves as a lasting reminder that victory is not secured by frontline troops alone, but by thousands of people working tirelessly behind the scenes. The story of the Red Ball Express is ultimately a story of endurance, innovation, and quiet heroism. It teaches us that history is often shaped not only by those who pull the trigger, but by those who ensure that others can keep fighting. As the dust settled over the roads of liberated France, the tire tracks of those relentless convoys slowly disappeared, but the path they carved carried an entire army toward victory, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon on the battlefield is the road that never stops moving.